Hi and welcome to CrossFit CBN. Today we are talking about honoring your parents. As children, we heard this a lot: obey your parents, listen to them, honor them. This is also the fifth commandment that God has given us. But some may find it very difficult to honor their parents, especially if they are in a strained relationship or they have absentee parents. Before we talk more about this, let's watch a short video of a person who had a bad relationship with his father.
I was playing around in the kitchen with my sister, and my mom was cooking at that time. Suddenly lost my footing, and my face just fell upon the pan of boiling oil. Hence the scar on my face. The scar had a very bad impact on my life. People treated me really differently and made fun of me and called me names like Terminator or Cain or Two-Face, which really hurt me as a child. And I can just remember myself just sitting in a corner alone and just crying and just wondering why this had to happen to me. To make matters even worse, my father started treating me differently to a point where he verbally even said that he didn't love me anymore. And after a few years, we found out that he was having an affair. And that's when I hated him. I hated my dad.
Today we have two guests with us, Mayu and Bayo, all the way from Shillong. Thank you for coming for a fireside chat with us. Mayu, this question is for you. When a child grows up with so much resentment against their father or their mother, do you think this would affect them as they start their own families? How should they resolve this? Do you think this is a generational curse?
I don't think it's a generational curse because in many ways it's a choice. Even as the child grows up and even as he starts his or her own family, it does affect in many ways. And so the best way would be to admit how one has been affected, sharing with the concerned parent, a father or a mother. I think that itself will be the beginning of coming to a resolution or resolve such an issue.
Bayo, Pastor just talked about, the first step is to share your feelings with the concerned parent. Did you or were you able to share how you felt with your father? And were you able to eventually forgive him? Was it easy to forgive him? Could you share a little about that journey?
Well, I didn't really get to share my feelings with my father at that time because immediately when he left, I never had that chance to. And because I was just filled with such rage and anger and hatred towards him, I never really thought I had the need to tell him anything anymore. When I felt the love of God and received the love of God, it was only then that I realized that that I myself personally needed forgiveness from all the things that I had done in my life, and experiencing forgiveness firsthand made me realize that I needed to forgive my father as well. 1 week before he passed away, I was just able to surprise him and meet him and just sit down and talk with him. I just told him that I was doing fine and we're all right at home and he doesn't need to worry about anything. I hugged him and was even able to pray for him and tell him that God loved him and that he forgives him and that we had forgiven him as well.
I'm sure this was not an easy journey for you. Pastor, I just have a question for you. There may be some who are watching who may have come from broken families. Parents are either divorced, separated, or even if they are not separated, they're just not in good terms. How do you think they can honor their parents, especially when they're put in a position of choosing sides?
Well, first of all, what Bayo did was a wonderful thing. We just have to remind ourselves we live just once. And at the same time, I was also sharing that at the end of the day, it's a choice. And so putting ourselves in our parents' shoe, if you can think about why my father said what he said, or why my mother said what she said, or what she did. I think that will somehow bring us to perspective.
I agree. Sometimes we need to take that step. Maybe our parents don't realize because they're human as well, right? Everybody makes mistakes. Sometimes we may just have to step up and honor them in the way that God has called us to. Bayo, my question to you is, multiple times the Bible talks about honoring your parents. How do you think that looks like in your day-to-day life, or in anybody's day-to-day life?
After experiencing the love and forgiveness of God, I realized that being able to forgive is such a wonderful thing, and being forgiven is an even greater feeling. It's like a burden being lifted up, and I'm sure that my father somewhere felt the same way, that he had a burden on his shoulders.
That's a good thought, Bayo. Just like you said, maybe your father had a burden lifted up as well. Pastor, I would like to ask you, on the flip side, on a parent's perspective, do you think a parent's action or reaction sometimes, not always, but sometimes could be dependent on their child's behavior, or the child may interpret it as a strained relation?
Now I can see things much better after becoming a father to my children. Especially when I look at my son and the way I grew up, things are quite different. Different in the sense I grew up as a very disobedient son, whereas the way I see it in my son, he is the opposite. And so the way we deal with our children is one thing, but at the same time the way we respond to the other person, because many a times we rather react than respond. In my case, as I grew up, I reacted to my father or my mother because I was the youngest son and pampered, and many a times it was more of sulking than responding to my parents.
As you all know, we are talking about honoring your parents. And before we end, I would like to ask a question to Mayu. What does it mean to honor your parents? What are the consequences and rewards of honoring your parents?
I remember one passage which comes back again and again, which is in the Holy Scripture, that obeying your parents, that itself is honoring your parents. And when you do that, there is a promise connected to that, that it may be well with you and you may live long. I think that's quite true, because when we honor our parents, or in one way, as we have been talking about forgiveness and asking forgiveness, being forgiven, we are releasing ourselves and at the same time embracing something new, which is such a wonderful thing to do.
I absolutely agree. In the Bible, in Exodus, Deuteronomy, Proverbs, Ephesians, there's so many places it talks about honoring your parents. And as we've heard today from Bayo and Mayu, honoring our parents is a choice we must make every single day. Thank you both so much for giving us your time and being with us to have this conversation. And if you've gone through a similar situation, how did you overcome it? We would love to hear from you. I hope you stay safe. Take care.